Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to call upon the moderator and the panelists of our first panel discussion on the topic, Driving Change and Building a Safe Workplace. Can cultural audit help in decreasing unconscious bias? I would now like to introduce you all to the moderator, Mr. Ankit Bansal, founder and CEO, Sapphire Human Solutions. And I would also like to introduce you all to the panelists, Megha Tata, Managing Director, South Asia Discovery Communications India, Harshbeena Zaveri, Managing Director and Vice Chairperson, NRB Bearings Limited, R.M.Vishakha, Managing Director and CEO, IndiaFirst Life Insurance Company Limited, Satish Rao, Chairman and Managing Director, Firmenich. Requesting Mr. Ankit Bansal to please take over and begin our first panel discussion.
Thank you, Ankita. That was a great talk, Purva, and I think it really set the tone for today's event. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural panel discussion for the first annual conclave of India Diversity Forum. My name is Ankit Bansal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sapphire Human Solutions, one of the leading executive search firms in India. Diversity and inclusion, or D&I, as it is commonly referred to, is a very hot subject today. It's a boardroom agenda in many companies. In fact, it has been on most CEOs' agendas for a major part of the last decade. But is it something that they are really serious about, or is it just a tick in the box? What does D&I mean to them and their organizations? Does it go beyond gender? What were the challenges they faced in its implementation, and how did they overcome those challenges? Is D&I a feel-good fad, or does it really bring some economic benefits? To talk about this and much more, we today have a great lineup of leaders who are staunch torchbearers of the D&I agenda, who believe D&I is not just socially transformative, but also has a bottom line impact. So Satish, Megha, Vishakha, Harshbeena, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you for being part of today's discussion. So if I can start with Megha. Megha, can I understand what is your organization's view on diversity at workplace? What does D&I really mean to your company?
Thank you, Ankit. Lovely to meet everybody on this panel. It's really inspiring to see, a diverse panel to begin with. And it's my complete privilege to be having this conversation. A topic and a belief system Discovery actually completely believes in to the core of its existence. And it was really inspiring, like you said, to hear Purva speak about diversity through on the women aspect. But I think diversity and inclusion goes beyond just a gender issue. And I think that is something we at Discovery are very proud of, putting that as a key focus in right from our global leadership downwards across different parts of the world where our offices exist. And diversity inclusion is not just about, it's not, like you said, a box to be ticked. It's something, what action you take should speak more than words. And to us, that becomes, to me at least, it became a very pronounced aspect, having worked in multiple organizations, in over the last so many years. I think Discovery's way of looking diversity inclusion is very, very real. And to me, that was a fundamental belief system I connected with, and multiple aspects. And it's not, like I said, about only the gender aspect. For example, we have this beautiful concept, a platform which we've created called Mosaic. And Mosaic, as the term suggests, is about multiple colors and multiple aspects, which encompasses what D&I stands for. And we do multiple initiatives, and it's across, whether it is through, whether it's hiring, recruitment, supplier, alignment, or unconscious bias training. For example, we have recently mandated an unconscious bias training for across all our employees. And I think that just makes it so much like I said, the actions are speaking more than words, because we all know that biases do exist in our world. It's the way we've been brought up. There are already certain mindsets we have been brought up with, and we can't get away from that. But do we just sit back and say that, okay, this is how it is, or do something about it? And I think making that conscious awareness in an individual about the unconscious bias which exists in our minds is such an important step. And I think that, to me, was a very pertinent step we've taken, which is making a fundamental difference. And not just about training. Training is pretty much a one-way street, right? You can just train somebody and some people absorb, some don't. But what are we doing as individuals and taking those steps that, okay, today I will take this step as an individual, as a professional, that I will not do X, Y, Z based on my own set of biases which I might have. And I think those are the very quantifiable steps we at Discovery have been taking and will continue to do, because like I said, for us, D&I initiative is not just a box to be ticked. It's something we completely believe in, and that's something I'm really proud of, being part of that ecosystem.
Fantastic. In fact, Satish, if I'm not mistaken, your company recently got awarded the prestigious EDGE certification, which I believe only 7 companies in the world have it. So would you like to talk about that and what D&I means to Firmenich?
Sure. Thanks, Ankit. Happy to speak about that. So first of all, yes, we are humbled and we feel privileged to be a part of this 7 exclusive companies across the world to get this EDGE gender certification, which not only talks about the gender ratio in the company, but it also talks about the promotion opportunities, the succession planning. It's a very, very intense audit done across the organization, across the globe. And Firmenich has got the 2nd highest level of certification, which to speak about, it comes pretty naturally to us, being the largest privately held fragrance and flavor company in the world, that this is our fundamental. This is the way we do our business. So as you very rightly said, Ankit, it's not a tick box for us. This is how we conduct business, period. Now, to illustrate this, of course, we have 50% of our global executive committee members, women. Across the Firmenich. So that's of course there, but I would say we have gone beyond gender parity and gender equality, and I wanted to narrate a very quick small story to illustrate that. It was in 2018 when in our lab in India, we recruited a visually impaired person, Arun, who was actually selling plastic material and pens in a railway station in Mumbai. We got him to our sensory lab. We, being a fragrance company, sensory is a very important part of our olfactive analysis. And look what we realized. A normal person takes almost 1.5 years to master the skill of smelling. And here is a person who mastered this in 6 months. And fast forward 3 years, he's now a happily married person to another visually impaired young, lovely lady. And last month, he bought an apartment in Mumbai. Look at the economic prosperity. So what I'm trying to say is it's a win-win model for all. So D&I makes sense when it makes business sense. And for us, it's a part of business. It makes business sense because A, it helps us. They are very loyal. Their retention, they don't jump across organizations once they're comfortable. And he is through it. Now we have got 4 of them employed in our organization. So the point I'm trying to make is when your D&I philosophy meets your business objective, nothing can stop. And I think that's the fundamental, to see how it connects with the purpose of your organization, how it makes business sense, and then it's no longer a tick mark. It just skyrockets.
Well, thank you, Satish, for sharing that story. Vishakha, let me come to you. You've been associated with the WWB Leadership and Diversity for Innovation program. So you've been somebody who's been a strong advocate. What are the D&I initiatives that you have driven in your organization?
Thank you so much, Ankit. I'm just going to break the monotony and say I have any of you over the weekend managed to watch Puglet on Netflix, and I think if you watch that, you will probably see the impact of life insurance on the women. Okay. And women in general have been people who are adept at negotiation and influencing. Right from the late night you wanted to go to a movie with friends, or you wanted to stay over at your friend's house. Despite the fact that the beneficiaries of insurance policies are always women, more or less, despite the fact that women are born negotiators and influencers, when you look around sales teams, you will see the biggest stack party ever. Okay. That used to be my big concern. And we did a lot in our organization to try and improve the gender ratio. When I look back at our organization and we look at the people from a diversity beyond gender, I think that has just somehow flown in very naturally. Because while we don't have, definitely visually impaired employees with maybe some physical challenges and stuff like that are there. Our workplaces to accommodate, physically challenged. I think all of that has become the norm, and all of that has become part of any modern building itself, and therefore for all organizations. However, gender diversity doesn't just happen by making changes in buildings and by making assessments, because there isn't active bias against physically challenged. Okay, there is active bias against gender. I know we call unconscious, and I'm not even calling unconscious. I'm actually using the active bias. Why? Because the anchor that you have to assess a woman is only the woman you've seen within your circles. And God forbid that your circle has been a very close-knitted community of women who have only been at home. You've been in a, all boys school, college, and workplace. You really don't know how to relate to a woman other than as your sister, bhabhi, mother. You don't have a professional relationship at all. And therefore, one of the fundamental things that I picked up is to say that women can be colleagues, women can be professionals, women can be people beyond the role models that you have seen in your exposure. And that has been very active. Then we started getting the real objections, because these are objections people won't talk about, right? These are objections you go and put out there and say, why? What is the problem? Do you think she is, only a homemaker? Do you think she can't be a professional? And questions like that will always say, no, nothing like that, because nobody says that they're biased. Then the objections will start become real. How will she travel? How will she have overnight stays? What happens when she gets maternity leave or she goes for any leave on account of medical termination? Then we said, okay, you know what? We'll adjust your targets for you. That's your concern, right? We adjust targets. We've had cases where we've had accidents and some of our employees have been hospitalized for 2 to 3 months. We've adjusted targets. Okay, I said the same thing applies for a female employee. Just like that guy is not going to get into an accident every year of his work, the woman is not going to have a child every year of her work with us, right? So let's just treat them both as incidents and make those adjustments. We started addressing real issues of managers. It is a real issue that if you don't have, we're all working in a private company on very limited number of people. You don't have hire for surplus. When you don't hire for surplus, one absent hand can make a lot of difference. And so we have a policy of replacement hiring. So you can actually hire from a consultant firm for a woman who is going on leave. So for instance, if we have women in accounts and they're going on leave for medical requirements, then we allow them to go and hire from the Big Four or any other chartered accountant firm for those 6 months duration. So the manager has a replacement and the woman who's gone on leave has a secure job to come back to. So we have tried to eliminate every real and genuine reason for not wanting to hire women, because it can hamper productivity or target achievement in real terms. And then the rest of it has got to be worked upon through constant awareness, constant role modeling, constant telling people, I'm not an exception, because people will say, when I say, guys, I'm here, right? Yeah, but you're the exception. I said, no, I'm not the exception. Give more women the opportunity. I will be the rule. And I think that's about then, continuing to convince people to give opportunities. So yes, diversity is big for me. And I believe that diversity from a gender perspective is more impacted by bias than other diversity issues. Maybe also transgender. But then I said, you know what, let's look at the percentages and let's try and see whether we can do everything, relative to the size of the problem. So I think that's how we look at diversity.
Those were some really very good practical implementable ideas Vishakha shared. Thanks for that. If I can come to Harshbeena. Harshbeena, you and me were talking earlier, and I remember you speaking about the importance of role models in implementing a D&I agenda. Would you like to talk more about that and your views about how D&I has changed your company, NRB Bearings?
Yeah, so as you know better than anybody else, to me, inclusion is a concept that really transcends equality. I think personally that it's the belief that all opportunities, services, all establishments and organizations should welcome people of all types. It's not just about male and female stereotypes, but fundamentally it's about societal roles and expectations, whether it's for disabilities or autistic or beyond genders, the various spectrum of genders. It really encompasses ethnicity, race, physical, every kind of differentiator to me. And when you keep that in mind, along with what I have learned about change and altering people's mindsets and worldviews, I think that seeing is believing. And unless you can create even a little space where they can go and observe and actually see what they hear as being translated into action, I think people tend to be very skeptical. It's more than a theoretical discussion. And it's a little bit like prejudice. Oh, you're Black or you're a woman or you're Muslim and you're my friend, but you're different. And I think that is the fundamental problem. This belief is so deep that even when you keep encountering it in small bits and pieces, it doesn't really change your entire approach and the strategies that you actually put into action to deal with it. Therefore, keeping that in mind, what we feel is that islands of excellence where you can actually see the best of the theoretical world that we're speaking of in action for people to observe and look at really breaks or shatters that belief system. So we've made gender diversity and inclusion a very, very strong part of our Thailand subsidiary because we felt that. I also believe that it's great to leverage culture rather than fight it. And we tend to have change initiatives where they're most easily accepted within the organization to showcase. So in Thailand, we have 20 to 30% ladyboys, 40% of our manufacturing units in terms of manufacturing lines within the plant are women-led. And this is not something that we had to fight. We just had a very fair meritocracy and people came in and we didn't judge them. So what do we do to make this change the rest of NRB? We send teams constantly. We send leadership constantly to Thailand, not necessarily with this as an open agenda, but we give them an opportunity to study the results that we're getting and why they're differentiated. And you will be shocked, that people come back And they just start implementing so many of these gender-free and bias-free policies because they see the benefit, all the benefits which were described by my two predecessors today on the panel. And I think what's very important is not just to change or have conversations between those who are discriminated against. And we tend to do that. We have all these women's events, which I think just defeats the purpose. Unless we carry the men, unless we carry the parents, we have deep engagement with the families, their attitude towards their daughters. Even, for example, their attitudes towards their sons, the expectations that they have. And we make this all very much part of the training programs and the learning. We celebrate Men's Day. We try our best to bring in all genders when we talk about Women's Day and Men's Day both. So I think that is one way that we try to get a different outcome. The other thing that we do, I think, is we invest in women's leadership very early on in their careers. What we found is that the number of women who've been coached, who were rewarded for execution in the early part of their careers is very wide. And we all know about that. But the minute you want to move them into a more important role, they're told that they can't think strategically. So fundamentally, we reward them for grunt work. And this is the kind of attitude that we have to all perceived minorities. And we actually do not expect the disadvantaged to rise. We work with a strong notion that they will not rise unless we do something very differently right from the beginning. So we identify great potential leaders, even from the bottom of the rung, the middle of the rung, the top of the rung, and we make sure that they're coached, we make sure that they are given strategic projects which are critically important to the company very early on. And the rest just actually takes care of itself because they get sort of like affirmative action, special attention and special opportunities because we expect them to be blocked. So I think that really covers the two largest initiatives that we have across the organization.
Sure. Thanks, Harshbeena, for sharing those initiatives. Satish, D&I is not just a simple HR policy, right? It's almost like a belief, philosophy, attitude, if I can say. What are the typical, roadblocks, you faced in Firmenich while implementing this agenda? And how did you really overcome those roadblocks?
Sure. First of all, I should say that thanks to the family-run business legacy and fundamentals, these kind of inclusive environment comes naturally to us. However, having said that, we are all human beings. There are definitely challenges. There are roadblocks. So I think the first thing begins with the mind, with the perception, with, as our previous panelists have already mentioned, is your thoughts becomes your words and words becomes your action, right? So first thing to do is to ensure that this whole awareness about diversity and inclusion, that it is good for business, it's good for us, it increases your productivity, it actually builds up customer empathy, it makes your talent retention and attraction much more. So first you need to market this whole thing that it's good for us. We are not doing this because it's a top-down mandate or it's something nice to do. It is because it's good for business. As simple as that. Once the leadership and the overall ecosystem understands this from within, there is an inner call, I think then everything flows pretty automatically. Then it's a matter of how you prioritize. First you take the gender priority, or then you take the LGBTI, or you take the visually impaired, or you take the smart working from home. Then it all falls in place, and then it's like any other business working model. So according to me, that's why we have in our company a very regimented training and awareness program, which is built as a precursor to all the initiatives. And once you do that and implement this with almost a military discipline, I think your overall company ecosystem just falls in the vision in which you have always visualized the company to be run. So that's why I say it's the how part of the business. as important or sometimes more important than the what part of the business.
Sure. If I can bring in Vishakha on this now. Vishakha, was it as simple as Firmenich's family philosophy, or was it different in case of IndiaFirst?
Honestly, we had the advantage of the fact that we're promoted by public sector banks. Like Bank of Baroda is a major shareholder. Okay. And when you look back into public sector policies, starting from the time that I joined as a direct recruit officer in New India in 1987, the policies always were that women you would have a woman on the panel, you had leaves, there was no disparity in salaries, all WOs got the same salary, it wasn't about any difference. So if you look at from a base of policies, there have always been gender neutral policies. The policies have not been different. That's been the legacy. That's been the whole advantage of the legacy. Now the legacy also had a lot of looking after women, and that's where it's the fine balance, right? When does chivalrism become patriarchy? When does that crossover happen? When is helping a woman who's physically weak, not carry a load and share that, move into not giving her an opportunity to do things? So it's that fine balance of when does being courteous move to being protectionist. So, and I think that's that balance somewhere. And then the shift over to the private sector, which as I said, was high focus on productivity at any cost. Everything that got rewarded was performance. You didn't have any space for non-performance. Then it started becoming about, can I have con calls at 10 o'clock in the night and 10:30 in the night? And can I talk to an employee at 10 o'clock without worrying that her family is going to get upset? And all of those, I think, started creating the barriers towards hiring women, because the ease of working with people of your own gender and your own, ethnicity and culture and all of those things that we talk about started getting preference, because that ease was aiding productivity. And I think the whole diversity and inclusion initiatives started disappearing because of the pressure on performance and productivity. And that's why we now have this whole uphill task of telling people that, look, your performance is not going to get impacted, your productivity is not going to get impacted. On the contrary, it's actually going to get higher. And we're having to convince people to hire people, to take on more roles, to take on more challenges. And I don't know if I managed to answer it, the question that you had, but I think suffice to say it is a very individual, challenge. All managers are not, against it. Neither are all managers for it. It is very, very individual. And I completely agree with Harshbeena. Diversity and inclusion agendas need to be taken up by people who have the authority to make decisions. And like it or not, today the authority to make those decisions is not with the benefactors of the diversity and inclusion policies. So it is people who are not going to be benefited by the policy who need to have the foresight to implement those policies and make those decisions. So, and I think that is the challenge, so when you don't experience the impact of the D&I and yet you need to make that decision to progress D&I, you need a lot of leadership and you need a lot of foresight. And to me, that is the challenge and not as much as individual behavior.
Got it. Megha, if I can come to you, Vishakha just spoke about the fact that, there was a perception that, furthering D&I can come in way of productivity and performance. In fact, many critics or critics of D&I say that does it come in line of meritocracy? So how do you think one can find that balance between the D&I agenda and meritocracy not getting compromised?
Yeah, I mean, these are, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So the fact is that you're not getting into the situation of hiring people just based on a certain agenda to address the diversity issue. I think one of the key ways to address this is having role models, and actually doing the real thing. I mean, look at this panel. This is a classic representation of an unconscious biased opinion. You have a hardware bearings company headed by a woman. You have an insurance company headed by a woman, and you have a perfume company headed by a man. I think that's where the examples really speak up, the role models, which will say that, okay, it is, and we are not where we are based on any diversity agenda, but based on our own merit. Right. So why should these two be, they are two separate issues. If you're hiring a certain person, whether he's that person's a male or a female or of any sexual orientation, should be hired based on his or her merit. So, like I said, I think the way we really can address this is putting role models. So, for example, in Discovery, we have so many leadership positions which are led by either women, all right, and it's a very strong leadership, women in the leadership position, and even from the LGBTQ community, and the fact is, or from different color backgrounds, and that's, I'm talking from a global point of view. For example, in the US, the Black Lives Matter was a big issue which was addressed through a horrific incident which took place. And Discovery really took up a very strong stance on that front. But when you look at the leadership, there are so many colored women who are in a leadership role, and that's example speaking for itself. Then you're not really advertising and saying that, we are diverse, we are inclusive, we do this. Action is speaking more than words. It's like how Satish spoke about, actually getting somebody from the visually impaired versus saying that we are wanting to do it, So I think that way, these are two separately, mutually exclusive in many ways. And I do believe that I think role models can play a key role, and that's something we at an organization level do it. But fundamentally, I think at a society level, that's the best way to get people to say that, if he can, I can. If she can, I can. And that's something, you make it more real, you make it more believable and relatable, so that people who are listening in will say, yeah, that's easy for them to say. Yeah, they're sitting in a panel and have been there, and, it's easy to give them all the gyan, all that. But we are ready to give you the examples. And we didn't come from any, it wasn't given to us on silver platter. We worked for it. We deserve where we are, and we shouldn't be apologetic about it. And I really strongly propagate this when I talk to younger women or in colleges and universities. Stop being apologetic. You don't become your own enemy. You see the examples and see that you can do it. It doesn't have to be an either or world. You can live in an and world, wherein you are a successful professional and a successful homemaker. It's possible because I have done it. So, so that's the role models to me will play a critical role in addressing some of these issues of, diversity and meritocracy debate, which is out there. We definitely need to change that discourse.
Harshbeena, can I bring in? I think you're on mute, Harshbeena.
Butt in a little bit.
Yes, please. We would love to have your perspective on this as well. Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a contrarian view, and I believe that it's critical for companies, for example, on the gender debate, which is the simplest one to really tackle, and the one that Megha spoke about, that it makes huge sense for boards and for the organization itself to ensure that they have a certain percentage of women in extremely senior leadership positions, which I think is fundamentally more important. People don't understand when I say I'm not very much attuned to just hiring a lot of women, because I've seen how hard their life is. Okay, it's really not helping them or society. In fact, it feeds into the stereotype, because you have a large number of overworked women who wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning to compensate for the fact that they go to work and they come back and they just hand their paychecks in. I'm much more a believer of having first as a priority women in leadership positions and changing the entire organization. I believe the rest will take care of itself. The number is not relevant. The power and the strength and the future that they build for the women of India is much more important to me, one. Secondly, the only reason that there should be more women in senior positions is your company will financially do extremely, extremely better than the rest. And I can literally give you an hour full of statistics, but I won't do that. I'll just do 3 or 4 based on one of the finest reports in the world, which is the Credit Suisse Gender 3000 report. And this is from the 2019 report. The market pays a 19% premium for women-led companies. 19% higher, 19 is a magic number, 19% higher return on equity is the actual number for women-led companies. Lower gearing, 10% less for women-led companies. Higher book to PE multiples. And most importantly, average growth for women-led companies is 14% versus 10. Now, there can be many reasons for that. Of course, the women who are leading companies are the best managerial talent that exists. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So I'm not sitting here saying women are better than men, but we're talking about diversity and inclusion. So all those in our company who are diverse and who we want to include are also outliers. They're fantastic because we are not going to take a chance, right? Because they speak for the entire group, unfortunately. Now, the second big advantage that D&I gives organizations concretely is that most of the leadership trait that we put a lot of effort trying to develop in the average man, a lot of money goes down the drain trying to do that. You can just be sure that the perceived minorities that you are picking up for your company are extremely capable and exhibit those leadership traits. For example, extreme mental flexibility to restate the goal as more information comes in, as they learn more, as they get more experience. And you can see that clearly in COVID. You can clearly see that this is an ability that women excel at. They create an overall framework. They live their lives constantly as if it's a crisis. So they're excellent at managing crisis. It's no big deal for them, right? Even having no maid come in to take care of your kids when you have to meet your number one customer is a daily crisis that you deal with. And you have strategies and coping mechanisms in place as part of your DNA. So keeping the overall framework, communicating effectively, adjusting the finer details as a matter of clarity, jumping in, attention to detail, making sure nothing goes wrong. I mean, these behaviors are not just women behaviors. They are also religious minority behaviors. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of young 18-year-old Muslim women that I have encountered in all these path labs. They do everything. They're so bright. They're so much better than anybody else, or they wouldn't be there. And
Harshbeena,
I think
I'll come back to you on that. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll come back to you on that. If I can go to Vishakha, and Vishakha, a good policy is something which can be measured, I feel, right? What are the yardsticks that you have kept in your organization to measure the effectiveness of your D&I policies agenda?
So, Harshbeena is so right when she says that it is not the number that matters, and it is in what roles that people are that matters. However, I'm one of those people who says everywhere, so why not? Let's just have more, because the positions come up more often in junior roles than in senior roles, and infiltration or creation of gender balance at leadership roles, the opportunities are fewer. The measures that we've got is very simple. It's a gender ratio, right? And the productivities. And we also always try to make sure that the productivity at no time is hampered. I have seen the disadvantages of reservations, okay? And I have also seen the disadvantages of not having any measures. So on either of those two extremes, you can end up, with reservations, you end up filling warm bodies who are not necessarily good. And that just acts as a demotivator for the entire organization. And it just actually kills the initiative completely. So it's very important that meritocracy is not compromised at all. But it's also important to see whether the efforts have been made. For instance, some of the efforts that we were earlier, our earlier shareholders was Legal & General from UK. And they had an entire philosophy of 50-50 by 2020. So, and they had very clear policies which we have implemented into IndiaFirst Life HR policies, which is for every position, you need to ensure that you have at least one woman candidate of equal caliber who meets the requirements as the remaining 4. So 1 out of 5. So you go figure out where that person is, but you make sure that's there, because it's impossible to believe that you can't find one candidate for every out of every 5 candidates for a leadership position. So that's one of the things that we have included. We always figure out and say productivity we monitor to make sure, and then there's a gender diversity and the gender attrition. These are the key figures. We're not making it more complex than that, Ankit. So,
Sure, Megha, a lot of HR leaders are also hearing to this panel discussion. How do you measure the effectiveness of whether your D&I program is going the right direction or not?
Yeah, actually, it's a very, very important question, because I think it's very important for all the leaders to accept the fact that, yes, it's important to address the D&I agenda and the initiatives each of the organizations do that. But how do you know that this is making a difference? How do you know that it is being effective and, addressing the actual needs which you think is being addressed? Because if you're larger organizations, you don't know down the line whether it's actually taking place. Is it actually being implemented? So one of the mechanisms, there is no right or wrong answer to this. Every organization has their own ways to address that. For us, what we do is get feedback. And how we get feedback is through employee surveys, and we make that it's an optional anonymous survey. Also, if you want your name on there, you can put there. And the questions are very, very transparent, very particular, very persistently highlighted as to what are the things which, and it's a very large survey, but skewed towards some of these D&I initiatives which are there. We do, for example, like I said, one of this is the Multicultural Alliance thing under which we do Mosaic. We do things like Discovery Women's Network. And each of the country has their own chapter, like in India, which is it's a very active body for us in India, or doing things like Talent Unlimited, wherein we hire, get internship for kids or students or just fresh graduates who are from underprivileged background. We've tied up with an NGO called Antarang, who, and we had about, a large bunch of people who came, and we got internship to them. We do mentorship programs with underprivileged kids, giving them direction. And about, I think, 17-20 of us signed up in India, driving, spending time and direction from our end. Now, all these initiatives are happening, but how do we get that? It's, is the feedback we get from our employees. And this is done actually at a global level, and obviously at a local level is something which I was really happy to get the recent result. It's all above 95%. The feedback we got, which is positive, about, especially with reference to the D&I initiatives we are doing. And that to me is the proof of the pudding, really. You can sit and make a lot of policies. You may implement those policies. Some may even get, implemented rightly, and some may, get wavered off all the down the line. But the reality is that, is it really making a difference? Are people feeling the difference? Are they seeing the value of it? And to me, that comes through some of this one particular mode, which I think has been very effective. So we strongly do these employee surveys at least twice a year, if not more.
Got it. Satish, you mentioned about the fact that, D&I only makes sense if it is impacting the business, right? Harshbeena spoke about the fact that companies get 19% premium if they're women-led. Would you want to talk anything about the economic benefits that D&I, tangible economic benefits that you have seen, and companies who still don't, pursue as their agendas can expect to see if they were to go down that path?
Sure. I'm happy to share the overall direction. As I said previously also, that it's far more easier for it to become a way of business when it is business ROI positive. That's not it's a no-brainer. Now, having said that, what are some tangible things which goes without saying that your D&I ecosystem in your company helps foster it? I'll give you 2 or 3 very quick directional areas. Number one is, for example, we are a B2B company. We service the customer. A good D&I inclusive ecosystem company obviously always tends to be more empathetic to customer needs, customer wants. And that's what we strive day in and day out. How can we be of best service to our customers? And this whole empathy factor oozes out of your organization as a part of your culture. It boosts innovation, because the more diverse the talent pool is, the more diverse the team is, you tend to get out-of-box ideas, out-of-box thoughts. And again, as much as we are a science and technology company, we're also absolutely creative because of the space in which we work. And we encourage both left brain and the right brain output to come in, and this is where D&I fosters. Today's millennials, they literally, the kind of questions they ask in the interview is, how good are you as a corporate citizen? What are your values? What are your purpose of the organization? I mean, this is what is going on in the young population, and sooner we adapt to this kind of a need of the society, I think it's better for us. So we are very strongly believing that it's not only good for the organization to be that way, it just makes pure business sense.
Sure. Harshbeena, can I bring you in? You said that, you're a firm believer in equality, right? For majority part of even our discussion today, diversity has been around gender, right? How do organizations take, diversity definition beyond gender when it comes to caste or religion or color? May not be so much in India, but overseas, right? Background, and I do believe there is discrimination on age that we definitely do in India, especially being an HR company, right? So how do you take this whole discussion and this whole topic in minds of leaderships beyond gender? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I completely agree with you that this is not just about gender. I think equality of fairness is really one of the most powerful shared beliefs. Ironically, in spite of what you said, not necessarily in India, it is actually one of the most significant contributors of Hindu philosophy. I know a lot of this has been forgotten, but all of you will be very familiar with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And this is actually a Puranic ideal, okay? It is as old as our oldest book. It's from the Bhagavata Purana. And I'm not getting my Sanskrit right, so please pardon my anglicized pronunciation, but the irony is that it is, no matter how it's pronounced, the loftiest Vedantic thought that exists in our entire, I would say, global history. And the interesting, identical or exact translation of this is that the world is indeed a family. I believe that indeed word is really very, very special. And whether you believe it or not, this is the truth. The earth indeed is one. And therefore, I think there's a lot of built-in understanding of together, of team spirit, of, for example, simple things like when you're hiring from the autism spectrum, and I'm not saying my company is evolved enough to do that, but the reason it's a very powerful notion that we're debating is because the fact that they cannot communicate with other human beings just makes them completely concentrate on the work at hand. And here you're fighting natural tendencies for people not to concentrate on quality control and on very, very complex tasks which are repetitive. And they are brilliant at that. So there is a very strong argument which is based on outstanding performance if you structure your company to enable all people from different, however you define it, and you used all the definitions, diversities.
Got it. Sure. Okay, I have very, very few last minutes left. So I wanted to understand, as leaders of your organizations, as CEOs, MDs, what is that, one D&I goal that you have set for yourself for 2021, which you would want you and your company to achieve? So, I'm going to ask the same thing to all of you. And if I can start with Megha. Megha, what is that one D&I goal which you would want Discovery to be achieving in 2021?
I think this issue is too large to make it just one goal. It needs to be an ongoing conversation, an ongoing discussion. It's not, like I said, an agenda item in a board meeting. So it has to be a constant dialogue. It's a constant evolution of things, what we can do. And that's what Discovery, I love about Discovery, because it's just that it's so part of its DNA, with multiple initiatives we do across. So for me, it's going to be an ongoing process of just enhancing some of those initiatives across in a bit more specific and a more stronger way as far as India market is concerned. But if I was to sort of quantify one thing, then I would say that I think the fundamental aspect of these biases, which is the core root of the problem in our lives, in our social structure. So as professionals, because we have mandated an unconscious bias, thinking in the system, what we're trying to do is that, and we've done this in a smaller way, like we've got our leadership team and our HR team to actually sit and deliberate and really self-reflect, okay, what are those biases we have as individuals? And what is that one thing or two things or three things you will do in this year which will overcome that bias or which will address this bias? Suppose you believe that, okay, you will not hire based on your own silly thinking for XYZ reason. Can you consciously commit that you will overcome that by doing exactly that? So that's a personal driven sort of goals, I guess, we're setting for our leadership. And I will be doing that for myself as well, because we're all humans. We've been brought up with in a certain way, and we do unfortunately have certain biases, and I am as guilty as, I guess, all of us. But I do make a commitment that I will make a conscious effort to be unconsciously biased.
Very good. Harshbeena, can I have yours, please?
So I think that our company strives to be a role model of inclusive, fair thinking. Our goal is less measurable. I have made a note of what Megha said. It's like amazing, concrete and achievable. But as a company, we look more at, I would say, directional goals. It's more important for us at this point of time to be on the right path and to measure subsequently. And that is basically our philosophy across. We don't strive to be the most profitable company. We strive to do the right things. So profit is an outcome. And I therefore would say that what we try very hard to do is give multiple positive choices to people who work in our company at each stage of their lives. And we understand the disadvantages that they have, which are mostly linked to their backgrounds and cultural disadvantages, like disadvantages of thinking. I spend a lot of time on the young people who join the company because it's a very concrete, unfortunate reality that many Indian parents keep telling you that you're going to fail. They create this huge failure mindset. And we work a lot on that and say, stop telling yourself you're going to fail. Tell yourself, oh, if I mess this up, there will be so much learning. And there are very, very strong cultural blocks in our upbringing. But we try to make sure that people believe and are in control of their own destinies, and that they use their position of power to influence the organization at whichever level as leaders, even at mid-level and junior level. They can be leaders of forward thinking and the kind of working against the biases that Megha so well mentioned. And this is a very concrete part of what we do. It sure. is a constantly part of our conversation.
Got it. Can I come over to you, Vishakha?
So I think I'm just going to break up that answer, since I've had the benefit of a little time, into two phases. One is from an action itself. And I think from an action, we have all been hearing unconscious bias. I loved the unconscious bias trainings that are happening. And I have been actually evolving more and more into something called conditioned responses. I don't think, maybe they're two sides of the same coin, but what I have seen is unconscious bias tends to put up people's hackles so much. There is so much negativity the moment people start talking about bias. So I'm actually using, and very successfully, I must say, able to provoke thought when I ask people to talk about their conditioned responses. I said, why are you choosing this person? What's the conditioning behind it? And what are the assumptions behind it? In a way, you can say old wine in a new bottle, but I think just that change in perspective, change in shift brings about an whole new energy in the way people are responding. And so one of the big things that I have started doing is a conscious awareness of decisions, and are they coming from a space of conditioned response or from a conscious decision making. So that's a big initiative that we're trying to drive, conscious decision making versus conditioned response. However, as we all discussed, measurement is equally important. At IndiaFirst Life, we have been in great places to work for 4 years in a row. We have also been in the top 20 best places to work for. D&I policies and their implementation and the effectiveness of their implementation is one of the key parameters for measurement of these rankings to get into GPTW. So our endeavor will be to try and make it to the top 100 best workplaces in GPTW. I think that is a measurable result that I will set.
Absolutely.
Can't be a CEO without having a target.
Absolutely. Satish, as they say, last but definitely not the least.
All right. I think this subject being so fundamental and strategic in nature, we strongly believe that as against keeping an annual goal, which sometimes can tend to be tactical. We have always kept a 4-year cycle goal. So we have a 2025 goal clearly laid out in 2 areas. Number one, that 5% of our employee workforce would be differently abled, period. That's very clear. They have to be a part of our overall ecosystem. And we, as I said, that it all begins with mind, that we need to condition our mind that this is good for business, good for us. So we have ensured that that 100% of our workforce would go through a complete mandated training on this unconscious bias and also human rights, because that's another evolving thing. We want the whole organization to go through that, and every single employee will go through this mandated training program. So those are the clear set objectives for our company.
Fantastic. Great. So, I think it's been a really, really exhilarating discussion. So much of candid thoughts, so much of candid views. I guess all of you heard them, what's there in their minds. D&I is not just a agenda, it's action. Companies are really doing it. Most of the companies who are doing it are actually seeing the benefits, economic benefits on the ground. Diversity goes beyond just gender, and while there would be roadblocks, I think if you set your mind to it, there is no reason why we can't overcome those roadblocks. It's time that all these phenomenal efforts done by these companies individually get collectively pooled, and I think IDF, India Diversity Forum, which has been formed, is going to further that cause in a very effective manner and make the needle move on this very important topic at a national level. On that note, thank you, very, very big thank you to all my panelists. Thank you for taking time out, and thank you for being such, candid and be transparent with your entire thoughts and sharing your views with the audience at large. I've been told that there have been more than 11,000 people who have registered for this event. So, a lot of people would be hearing you and making their notes. I've made mine. And I hope this discussion just doesn't stop here, but, starts of being, which I would call as a D&I revolution in India. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Over to you.
Moderated. I think great conversations and well moderated. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishakha. Thank you. Thanks, Satish. Thanks, Harshbeena.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ankit.